Hello, boys and girls. Today, Katherine is going to make hot cross buns. Now, hot cross buns are always made around Easter time, and they're just kind of a tradition. They're made with yeast. So this is our first time using yeast, and yeast rises our bread, just like if you were using sour milk and bread soda is one way. Baking powder is another way of rising things. Eggs is another way of rising things. And now we're going to be using yeast. So it's fun to be using a new thing. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to look at the utensils very quickly. We have a big bowl for mixing. I'll have 2 small bowls. I'll have my measuring cups, my measuring spoons. We will have a wooden spoon, a knife, a sharp knife, a grater for grating an orange zest. What else have I? I have something for spreading flour. I have a small chopping board here. I have a scissors for cutting the top of the packet, and of course I have my oven gloves that I will need later on. I have some milk in a jug, okay, and our tin. So I'm using a kind of a small Yorkshire tin like that, all right? And that will be greased, of course. So then on the ingredient side, we have flour. When you're baking with yeast, you can, if you like, if you do a lot of it, you can use what they call strong flour. But ordinary plain flour is what we're going to use. That's important because if you use self-raising, then you've 2 different things to rise your bread and they would clash, okay? So it's yeast and plain flour. That's the important thing. We're going to have some milk. We're going to have the yeast, as I said. This one is the fast action yeast, which is easier to work with. We're going to have some sugar, some mixed spice, some orange zest for flavor, some sultanas, 2 eggs, a 1/4 block of butter, and I think I've named everything. Okay, so we're going to begin. First thing we're going to do is we're going to measure a 1/4 cup of milk into one of our bowls, right? So it's a 1/4 cup of milk into the bowl. Now, I'm going to put this into heat for 20 seconds. Make sure it's covered into my microwave. So into the microwave for 20 seconds. Now, when we're cooking with yeast, yeast needs 3 things to work. It needs moisture, so therefore we have the milk and the eggs. It needs food, so we're going to give it a bit of sugar, and it needs heat. This is the important thing. A little bit of warm heat, like hand hot, okay? Anything hotter than hand hot and you'll kill the yeast, okay? So the rising of the bread must be done before we put it into the oven. And then when it goes into the oven, the yeast is dead and it doesn't rise anymore, okay? So slightly different. The other things we use, like bread soda and baking powder, they work when they're in the oven, okay? So that's ready now. I'm just going to take out my milk, and I'm going to put in a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of sugar, and we're going to put in a packet of yeast. Yeast usually comes in a double packet like this, so we're just going to use one side. So I'm going to get my scissors, I'm going to cut it in 2 like this, and shake down the yeast, and then sprinkle it over my bowl. Okay, so this is the part I want you to have done before our class on Thursday. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a little mix there, and we leave it aside. And we want it to get bubbly and frothy, and that means that our yeast is alive. Okay, so we'll leave that over to the side there, and you can just put a plate or a piece of, I'm just putting a piece of card on top of it, and we'll leave that work away there. We're going to move on now to, I suppose, what we call step 2. So I get my mixing bowl, here it is, and we're going to measure 3.5 cups of flour into our mixing bowl. And if you think of it, sieve it. It's not the end of the world if you don't. Okay, so I have my flour here in a bowl. It just makes it easier to take it up instead of having it in the bag. All right, so at the back of the knife, just measure it off, and I go 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Right, and a half is the green one, as you know, the middle one. 3.5. So that is our flour done. So we're going to sieve that flour now. And next, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar into it, all right? Okay, so I'm just making a well in the center there. I'm going to get my 1/4 cup, and I'm going to get a 1/4 cup, shake it off, of sugar, okay? I'm going to sprinkle that all over there. And next we're going to get, I'll just check my recipe. Oh yes, we're going to put in some salt. Most of my recipes, as you know, I don't add salt. But in this case, when you're working with yeast needs salt to work properly. So about a 1/4 teaspoon, which is just a couple of turns of your salt cellar, maybe, or a couple of pinches, all right, of salt gone in. So that's gone in, and I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of mixed spice. Okay, that won't fit in there for me, so I just have to put it into a cup for a minute. Right, so I want 2 teaspoons, level it off, 2 teaspoons of mixed spice, and this is for flavour. Some people put different things, but we put mixed spice, all right? And we're also going to melt a 1/4 block of margarine or butter. Now, if you're cooking with yeast, there's a lot of steps and a lot of work, so it's probably nice to add a bit of butter instead. All right, so I'm going to put this into the microwave for 30 seconds. And when that comes out, that'll be quite warm, so I'll be very careful about adding that into our liquid. Now you can see our hot liquid here. You can see the way it has all bubbled nicely. Can you? Can you see that? Yeah, it has bubbled nicely. So we're going to put that into the center. Make a well mix up your flour, your mixed spice, and all of that. Okay. And we're going to put this mixture, our yeast mixture, in here. And it's nice and warm. You just want to keep it warm, not hot. Okay, so I'm just going to mix it around a small bit, because I don't want to put any hot margarine in on top of it. Okay, so we have the margarine melted. All right, now it might be a little bit too warm, so I'm just going to wait for a minute. I'll put in my eggs next. We'll beat our eggs. We can use the same bowl as we had the yeast mixture in. Spare the wash up. So just to recap now, in here we have our 3.5 cups of flour, a 1/4 cup of sugar, some salt, and 2 teaspoons of mixed spice. We've added the yeast mixture, which was the 1/4 cup of milk, our little packet of yeast, and a teaspoon of sugar. And now We have melted the margarine, and I'm going to use my spatula, and I have a hole in the center, and I'm going to put in my melted butter as it is. Then I'm going to put in my 2 beaten eggs into the bowl. I'm going to add a half a cup of milk. Okay, a half a cup of milk. I'm going to add a half a cup of sultanas, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of orange zest. So for this, of course, I have to use my grater, and I have a little board and a little grater here, and I'm just going to go around gently and get about 2 teaspoons of zest. And remember not to go into the white pith, because that doesn't taste well. You just want just the outside, the flavour. Some people use lemon. You can use lemon the same way as I'm using the orange if you prefer it. Okay, let's have a look-see. I think we have enough there. Right, so we'll get our teaspoon and we will see. So get your 2 teaspoons of orange. So it's about the zest of a whole orange, your 2 teaspoons. See, so we'll put that in there, and we won't waste these last little bits because they're lovely flavour. Anyway, so I'm popping that away. I'm giving my hands a quick rinse because we wash our hands very often. Okay, and I dry them. Okay, so in here I have all the liquids in the centre. So I'm going to work the way we do in the centre, a bit like pancake batter. You start and you're turning and you're stirring around in the centre, and all the time you're taking in more of the flour, okay? And it might seem kind of dry, but just keep on going and you will get it all in. Yeast is a magic kind of a thing to be working with, because it, you know, it makes that lovely white bread. You can make all sorts of things with it, but you just have to be patient because you have to stop. When we've this mixed now, we'll have to stop and cover it with an oiled polythene bag and let it double in size. And it's a bit magic coming back a few hours later and finding that it has doubled in size inside in your bowl. Or sometimes you can leave it overnight. Okay, and you'll find it's quite hard. It's not easy to mix this when you have yeast in it. It's quite hard. Now, to be honest, to me, this one feels slightly dry. It's okay, but well, no, it's working. You can maybe work it with your hands for a few minutes to get it all taken up. So can you see how it's going there now? So you see the dough there the way it is. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to oil a polythene bag, right? And this is just so it doesn't stick to it or anything when it rises up. Let me see where I have it. I have it here. Okay, so you just want a plastic bag. This is a grand big one. A shopping bag will do you absolutely fine. Put in your drop of oil like this, small drop of oil. Whoops. in your small drop of oil and just get your oil to go all around the inside of the bag. So we want to block out the air, we want to keep it warm. So I'm going to put it in like this, into the bag. Okay. And I'm going to leave it room in case it rises up. Now I would like it to fill the bowl, okay? To fill the bowl up to the top. So now I'm going to leave that for a number of hours. Again, that's step 2. You will know that I have stopped the video and gone away, and we'll come back and see it. And this is as far as we will go when we're doing our class on Thursday, and then you'll be able to finish it off yourself when I show you how. Okay? Now, here we go. I'm back again, and we have our polythene bag and our bowl, and we wanted it to double in size, and you can see that it has more or less doubled in size, okay? And it's nice and airy, all right? So we're going to put some flour on the unit. I have my tin ready, which is just a small size Yorkshire tin, and I have lined it, okay? And I have greased it ever so lightly, all right? So we're going to put flour on your fist, like that, on your fist, and just pound it back in, and you'll feel the air coming out of it, okay? Right, so you're pounding it back in like that, around and around. You're sort of kneading it in the bowl, okay? Round and round and round, and you can smell the yeast. It's lovely, right? So we call this knocking back, where you're actually knocking it, and that sort of stretches it and helps the gluten to develop. And as you see, when I'm knocking it, it's stretching out a bit further. So that's called knocking back, okay? So you want it, so we're knocking it back with view to it stretching out. So we're knocking it back, and you can see each time that it's getting that bit longer, you know. Double it up, knock it back. Now you can't help the actual sultanas fly out a bit, but we'll pick them up, we'll put them back in a minute. So you're knocking it back like that, okay? So when you're happy enough that it's pretty elasticy, and again, you're sort of, it's different to other breads that you're pounding it, okay? So I'm picking up all those sultanas that have gone awry, right? So a bit like we do with the biscuits, you make it into a big long round, and you should be able to make about 12. So get a little bit of help with it. Go it into halves and into quarters, right? And then each piece into 3. Okay, into 3, into 3, and that way, when you cut it like this, it means that they're all going to be much the same size, okay? So there they are ready. So each one then, you sort of knead it into a round, okay? So make it into a round ball like that, and put it . So then we roll out the pastry a small bit of pastry that you've left over. This was from a quiche I made the other day. And don't worry when that happens. A bit more flour under it again. You don't want that much anyway. But you have it nice and thin. Okay, so now I'm going to cut strips like this with my knife. Okay, so I want them about 2 inches long. So I'm just going to put them across like that. Now, there we go. So put away my bit of pastry, and there they are, ready to prove again. Okay, so you get your polythene bag again. It's already oiled. You put them into it, and you leave them either overnight or maybe for another 2 hours or so. So you can see that it's a long process, and you can see now what they look like, and we'll see what they're like when we come back to it, okay? Brushing with maple syrup makes them all nice and shiny. So that's your completed hot cross buns. They were 30 minutes in the oven.